Imagine a global crime ring hacking the system to erase the history of democracy. Sounds like a movie, but it's the premise of Investigation Declaration, a brilliant new educational game from iCivics. With America's 250th anniversary, this game turns your students into Secret Agent 6. They'll time travel across the world to track how Enlightenment ideas like natural rights and the social contract shaped our Declaration of Independence. It encourages kids to think freely and piece together evidence like real historians. It's completely free on iOS, Android, and the web. Teachers, parents, head to iCivics.org or search Investigation Declaration in your app store today. Imagine pulling into a quiet residential neighborhood in southwest Missouri during the height of the Great Depression. The year is 1933. Route 66 is only 7 years old, buzzing with bootleggers, travelers, and bank robbers looking for an easy escape across state lines. A stylish young gang rents a garage apartment on Oak Ridge Drive. For 13 days, 5 people hole up inside drinking whiskey, writing poetry, playing cards, and spending stolen cash. Then, on April 13th, the police close in. A 5-man team arrives expecting small-time bootleggers but walks straight into a storm of gunfire. 2 lawmen lose their lives, and the outlaws tear away down the highway, escaping into the Missouri fog. In their frantic rush to flee, they leave behind clothing, jewelry, handwritten poems, and an undeveloped roll of Kodak film. Within 48 hours, those photographs are printed in newspapers across the country. In a single flash, the obscure Barrow Gang is transformed into the most famous outlaw couple in American history, Bonnie and Clyde. Welcome to Talk with History. One filmmaker, one historian, leading history-inspired world travels for the curious, the history lovers, and the explorer in us all. I'm your host, Scott, here with my wife and historian, Jen.
Hello.
Today, we're continuing our Route 66 deep dive series as we roll down the Mother Road to Joplin, Missouri. We're tracking down the exact hideout where the Barrow Gang staged their deadly shootout, and we'll visit the Joplin History and Mineral Museum to see the actual artifacts left behind. We're taking you to the front door of that historic garage apartment and walking through the museum displays where you can see Bonnie's original jewelry, the camera model that took those iconic roadside photos, and the police records from that fateful day. Stick around to the end because we'll reveal the wild story of how Bonnie's stolen necklaces ended up in this museum, and how the infamous botched raid on Route 66 turned 2 Texas bandits into nationwide legends. I'm Scott Benny, so keep your hands on the wheel and check your rearview mirror. We're chasing outlaws down Route 66. All right, Jen. So we are on episode number 3 or 4 of our Route 66 series here.
Yes.
All right. And as they heard in the intro, Joplin, Missouri, Bonnie and Clyde, very popular topic. The video's got some good traction right now. So if you're curious, you can go check it out.
They're always a popular.
They're always a popular topic. However, before we get into that topic, I want to mention that we were recently ranked as the #1 travel and history podcast on FeedSpot, which is like a podcast website data aggregator. And this list just popped up the other day, and I saw that we were the number one podcast. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, congratulations. This is a big testimony to your hard work, Scott. Yeah, we are the #1 history travel podcast. So if you're looking for travel and history combined into one podcast as you drive to the location, or if you're just curious about it, we tell you how to visit, the history behind it. And just in this case, in Joplin, Missouri, we were traveling Route 66 and looking for interesting anecdotes, historical events that took place along Route 66. So this is not really like on the actual route. It's off the route, but it's in the city that it goes through.
Yeah, so Route 66 goes through Joplin, Missouri, and we've got, at the end of this series, we will do kind of like an overview, a whole video where you can watch one video and see every spot along the way. And Joplin, Missouri is going to be one of those locations that we cover. But just off the road, I mean, it was like maybe a mile or two, is this apartment and then the museum.
So the museum is almost on Route 66.
Yeah.
I remember we just turned right and we were back on Route 66 from the museum that houses all these artifacts. The apartment is off Route 66, but the apartment is available on Airbnb. Yeah. So if you are driving Route 66 and you're like, I want to stay in Joplin, Mississippi, I want to stay somewhere cool, you can stay in this Bonnie and Clyde garage apartment that they were in 1933 for about 2 weeks. They were there. And the thing is, it looks almost like it did then.
And I was surprised because both you and I, we went out and we actually went there first and then we went to the museum. So we went there first. There's a little sign out front. It talks about the history there. And the museum itself actually looks not the museum. I'm sorry. The apartment itself looks relatively modern, right? It's got this kind of stone kind of front to it, the side to it. It's got the garages and then windows up top. And we're like, oh, I wonder if they've rebuilt this. Maybe this is just the location. But when we went to the museum and we saw an old picture from the 30s or 40s, whenever that picture was from, it looks exactly like it did back then. So what we saw is basically exactly what it looked like.
Yeah. So it's located at 3347 and a half Oak Ridge Drive. And its door opens up onto 34th Street. It was built in 1927, and it's this 2-story building on a poured concrete foundation, and it looks like concrete bricks. It looks like they probably formed the concrete into like these concrete bricks. It's American craft style, but they haven't changed that facade. It looks exactly the same if you hold up the pictures. The garage doors, of course, have been updated. The windows, the front door is different, but everything about the outside looks the same. And then if you're in the space upstairs, like that's the space that they were in. They rented it. So what was also interesting is when we went to Joplin Museum, the guy there gave me the actual receipt, like a copy of the receipt of when they rented the building.
That was cool.
And we'll put a picture of it up here so you can see it. But they rented it April 1st, 1933, and they rented it for $21. And it was supposed to be for the entire month they had it for. And as they are there, so Bonnie and Clyde are both there. We're going to talk about Bonnie and Clyde and how they've made their infamy. I want people to know at the time, people don't know Bonnie is a part of this gang yet, right? They know Clyde Barrow. They know his brother, Buck, because they're probably infamous lawbreakers at the time. They've already been in and out of prison. Buck has just been released from prison. He's on parole.
Yeah, so they're known. They're known by law enforcement.
Yes, and so Buck is joined by his wife Blanche. They have one other person with them, W.D. Jones, and so there's 5 of them who rent this apartment for a month. And this is so they can kind of relax and have a good time and enjoy the fruit of their spoils.
Yeah.
And so, but they start to get rowdy and they have drunken card games. And I know Clyde accidentally fires one of his automatic rifles by mistake.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It brings attention to the law in the area. They think that they're bootleggers.
Oh, so that's how they caught up. Because I was thinking about that. I was like, why would the police show up thinking it was bootleggers? Because they weren't out there trying to sell whiskey or sell illegal alcohol or anything like that. But that makes more sense if they're just being loud, rowdy, and accidentally shooting their guns.
Yeah, and they're getting drunk, right? I guess they're buying like a case of beer a day. Yeah. For 5 of them. And so that's when the suspicion of the lawmakers come out there. So there was a raid organized on April 13th, 1933. So again, they're not there for barely 2 weeks, right? And that's when 2 armed carloads of police pull up and the gang intercepts them with gunfire, right? Because they're already on the loose and pulling off heists.
They've been robbing banks.
Yes.
So they've got guns and ammunition, right?
Yes.
And we'll talk about the pictures here in a little bit, but they're taking these pictures while they're here at this, or at least over the course of before the police show up. And so in the pictures is all these guns and all this stuff. So they have the weapons to fight back.
Yeah, they're kind of taking a break, right? They're living off their spoils, but They respond with gunfire. 2 policemen are killed in this raid. One instantly, one gets injured and then dies later. And what they leave behind in a rush is their clothing, and they leave behind an undeveloped roll of film, and they leave behind some weapons and things along that nature. And so jewelry. And so that is kind of what first gets put into the newspaper. They develop these photographs, and these are the infamous photographs of Bonnie with the pistol on her hip, with her foot up on the car, the cigar in her mouth, her pushing the rifle against Clyde's chest, like holding it. And they don't even know her name yet. In the paper, they say an unidentified female. So she hasn't quite gotten to that status of Bonnie and Clyde yet. And what's neat about it is they have recreations of those photographs at the museum. They have the camera that was used to take those photographs, not the actual camera, but the model. Yeah. But they do have her actual jewelry that was found there. And I also want to talk a little bit about, if you're a fan of Bonnie and Clyde, you probably have seen the 1967 movie with Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty. They do depict this in that movie. If you saw the 2019 Highwaymen with Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson, they go to this apartment and look at the things.
Oh, I didn't know that.
To know who they're looking for. And that's when they first comment how small Bonnie is.
Oh, and that was something that they brought up at the museum. That was like commented, and that's kind of like when they finally knew who they were looking for.
Yes. I mean, she's less than 100 pounds, barely 5 foot, right? Clyde's not that big either. But so you can compare, like when they stand beside each other, like she's smaller than him. And that's when they first make the comment of how small she is. They don't have her actual clothing at the museum. They say the clothing was all given away and donated, but they have what looked like the clothing that they got that day. So you can see kind of the idea.
So that means there's probably, like, Bonnie's clothes is probably in somebody's attic in Joplin, Missouri.
Totally.
That's crazy.
And they like to dress nicer. So you can see Clyde's wearing suits, Bonnie's wearing nicer dresses, and she likes the costume jewelry. Yeah. Now that is the actual jewelry. And we'll talk more about how they got that.
That was really cool because they have it right there on display. So just kind of to reset the scene. So we went to the apartment, filmed out there, and then we went and tracked down this museum. And this museum is kind of like inside a community center, very easy to get to. There was like a big train thing going on, like they were doing like a train expo type thing. But they were very kind. For the folks watching at the museum, they were very helpful. They let us in. The folks that were in that corner of where the museum normally would just have their stuff, they had something else sitting out. So the people working there kind of cleared everything out for us. And then they just let us kind of film everything. It was nice. It was all in one spot. And so this museum, you can go see it right now. If you want to use the History or Drive app, we'll have it marked on the History or Drive app. In fact, one of our lifetime members put in the private Facebook group for lifetime members of the History or Drive app. He just used our app for a big trip. And so he went, his name is Barry, and he went through Nebraska, Missouri, Kansas, and he used our app while he was on his trip. He already had some stuff pre-planned, but as he was out there, he mentioned that he'd pull it up and see what else was around in his area. And that's exactly what we're trying to help people do. So he's a good example of that. So if you're in the Missouri area, if you remember Route 66, we came down from St. Louis. We're coming down through Joplin. We're going to head our way towards Kansas and Oklahoma. If you're in that general area, you can pull up the app. In fact, I have it's mapped right now. If you go to historyordrive.com and you decide to try it out, you can go see exactly where it is and you can watch the video. It's really cool.
It's really cool. So Bonnie and Clyde, who are they? Right? We know them as these infamous rebels, definitely outlaws. They're definitely not good people.
They are murderers.
Murderers, right? So Bonnie Elizabeth Parker meets up with Clyde Chestnut Champion Barrow. They are kind of during the Great Depression. They're during this Public Enemy era. When you think of 1931 to 1934, the big gangster movies of the time, think of James Cagney and Public Enemy. They kind of embody that in reality, right? They are these people. They're have criminal acts of robbing stores. They rob banks. They kidnap people. They murder people. And their big time frame is 1932 till their deaths in 1934. So they really don't have a big span. It's 2 years. And this hideout is 1933, in April of 33. And this is when these photographs, even the most famous photograph that you will see on Wikipedia, was one of the ones discovered here in Joplin, Missouri. This is when people learn of Bonnie. So again, she has maybe a year and a half when they know who she is, a part of this outlaw team. But because of what they did and this storytelling behind it, the movies behind it, they've gone down in notoriety as these famous outlaws.
Yeah, well, and one of the things that when I was kind of prepping for this, that made this a little bit more, I'll say, digestible in the public is the pictures they took. Sure, there's the ones where they're holding the guns and she's got the cigar, but there's also some of just her and Clyde. And they look like a young married couple that's traveling across the country. That's what it looks like. So people, you can kind of identify with that. So people at the time, they see this young couple, right? Clyde holding her in his arms, and they're standing in front of a car, like as if they were traveling somewhere. So people in a weird way kind of romanticized it, and they were kind of drawn to that because if you can picture yourself in someone else's shoes, or in this picture, you're more naturally drawn to that. Now, what we had to kind of keep reminding ourselves, and when we were making the videos, these were bad people.
They killed 12 people.
They were murderers, and they eventually got what they deserved.
They killed 9 officers and 3 civilians, 2 at the Joplin, Missouri place. So I want to remind people, Bonnie and Clyde were never married because Bonnie was married to someone else the entire time. So Bonnie is married right before she turns 16 years old to Roy Thornton. And Thornton is a bad guy. They don't spend a lot of time together. Thornton's in jail, right? But when Bonnie is killed in May of 1934, she's still wearing the wedding ring from that marriage. They never divorce. But because she's kind of estranged from him, she meets Clyde in 1930. This is 4 years after she's been married. She considers herself married to Clyde.
Okay.
They consider themselves a couple. So she keeps the wedding ring as a token to her relationship with Clyde, not because of her real marriage to Roy Thornton, but technically they're never married.
Yeah. So I didn't actually know that. So that's news to me.
Yes, but they very much are romanticized, right? These two people together in love, definitely misguided, but they are devoted and they're willing to put their lives on the line continuously for each other. And it becomes very romanticized. Let's not forget all the people they kidnapped and killed and robbed. So it just becomes a very glamorized thing. Now, because it's 1930, they're using Route 66, they're using these old roads, and because communication doesn't travel as fast, they're able to kind of get in and out of places. But once these photographs come out, once people identify this is Clyde Barrow and Bonnie Parker, they're running around with Clyde's brother and his wife and maybe some other people. From time to time, they had 1 to 5 others with them. It made it harder for them to go to hotels, harder for them to go to diners, because that was what was in the newspapers. That what was out about them. So this is the time too. They can't rent any more garage apartments. Now they have to camp out. Now they've got to hide out. Now they've got to break into locations and stay. And that's when the law really does start to catch up with them. And they are ambushed in May of 1934, right outside of, I think it's Gibsonland, Louisiana. And that's May 23rd, 1934. And what's so interesting about the lawmen that catch up with them, and again, the really great movie, Highwaymen, 2019, with Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson does a great job of this. They're not going to take them alive. They're just not, they don't even think about it as an option. They just are going to make sure that they put an end to Bonnie and Clyde. So if you remember, the ambush is just their car is riddled with bullets. The bodies are riddled with bullets. Only Clyde and Bonnie are in the car, and they make sure that they have ended this crime spree of these two people, which, and again, almost romanticizes them at the end because they die together. They're brought back to their original city right outside of Dallas Texas. And what's interesting is Bonnie would write this poetry. And one of the poems is actually found there that she writes called The Story of Suicide Sal, which is not her love story about Bonnie and Clyde, where she said the two of them will be buried side by side. In the end, Bonnie and Clyde are not buried side by side. Lots of people have been to their graves. There were a lot of spectators who came to where their bodies were, came to those funeral homes, tried to get pieces of clothing, tried to get photographs. Wow. It was crazy. And so their family, especially Bonnie Parker's family, wanted no part of that. And so they buried them separately. And you can visit their graves today. But what was very interesting about this hideout, again, that it looks the same, that it's really a part of American history and getting these first photographs of Bonnie and Clyde. This is the first place that actually cements Bonnie's part in this outlaw couple. But when you see those actual necklaces, there's something about that when you're there. They have the door from the upstairs. There's a door. They have the original door, and they have a model of the rifle that Bonnie is holding. Now, like I said, they confiscated that rifle in the house, and that rifle was won at an auction and put on display in the pawn shop in Galena, Kansas. Yep. So I want people to realize Joplin, Missouri is right on the border to Galena, Kansas, of those 13 miles of Route 66 in Kansas. Yep. So you're crossing the border right there. And somebody who won that rifle in auction put it up for display in a pawn shop right along Route 66. So if you want to see the apartment, you want to go see the artifacts at the museum, you can drive right over to the pawn shop in Galena. It's right along Route 66 and see the shotgun from those famous photographs.
Yeah, and there's other stuff to see in Galena too, because that's where they have the cars on the route, cars on the route. So they've got like an example of Tomater, right, that it helped inspire the movie Cars and stuff like. So there's other stuff in Galena, Kansas, because Route 66 goes right through there. And so if you're driving Route 66 from Joplin through Galena, Kansas, and you're going to stop, and I think that'll be one of the points on History or Drive is Galena, Kansas. You can also, if it's open, it wasn't open when we went over, you can also go into the pawn shop and see that rifle.
Yes, and what's neat too is they have the original car door of the lawmen that come there to stop Bonnie and Clyde. The two men that are killed there are Newton County Constable John Wesley Herringman and Joplin Police Detective Harry McGinnis. So their pictures are both there on the wall. We show them in the video. They're among the 12 others that are killed by Bonnie and Clyde. But when we talk about the necklaces and how they got these necklaces.
So this was pretty cool. And I didn't think about it when we went in there because I just thought that they were examples, right? Just kind of like the weapon that they have on display. It's an example of what Bonnie had.
Or the camera is an example.
The camera. And it's not the actual camera itself, right? And actually the camera type for all my fellow video photo nerd friends is a Kodak Brownie box camera. So that's the kind of camera that they used. But that's what's on display. And if you watch the video, and I'll put clips over of this if you're watching the video version of this, you can see it right there. And so it shows some of the photos and stuff like that. But then you're looking at the necklaces, and I'm taking, B-roll of the necklaces and things like that. And I didn't think about like whether or not they were the actual ones. And then the guy who kind of helps run the museum, he's former Navy. Mm-hmm. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. If I could remember, I'd mention it. But he comes up and he's like, "Hey, did you know those are the actual necklaces that Bonnie left in the apartment?" And we're like, "What? How did that happen?"
So he tells the story that the detective who took them as evidence, and they were in the evidence room for a very long time, decided to give him to his girlfriend.
So he took them out of evidence and gave them to his girlfriend.
And then the girlfriend's granddaughter, who inherited them, contacted the museum and said, "I don't want anyone to get in trouble. I don't want to get rid of these. I know they're important. Would you like to have them?" And he said, "Absolutely." So she gave them over. She gave the custody over, and not wanting to get anybody in trouble or anything like that. So they have the original necklaces that were Bonnie Parker's necklaces, and it's costume jewelry, but super cool of the era, the 1930s, that original stuff that she would wear. And you could tell she definitely liked to dress up, but it's super neat to see them there. They also have the Boston Globe on the wall, a recreation of the newspaper with those first original photographs printed. and it says Clyde Barrow beside an unidentified female. So this is how you know. I mean, within a year, this is April 1933. They're killed May 1934. Within a year, she's going to become famous.
Yeah,
and
household name.
And they're going to become famous as a duo. But their lifespan is not very long here. But it's super neat to go there, tell that story. It's such an interesting part of American history. It's on Route 66. You can stay in the location. The location looks almost the same today. You can just stand there with these artifacts of American history and Bonnie and Clyde before you hit Kansas along the way. So it was neat to do. And thank you to the museum for allowing us such access to those things.
Yeah, super fun. As you leave the quiet streets of Joplin and look back at the unassuming apartment on Oak Ridge Drive, it's wild to think about how much history turned on a single afternoon. 13 days of laying low ended with 2 fallen officers, a frantic escape down Route 66, and a forgotten roll of Kodak film that changed everything. Standing in the Joplin History Museum in front of Bonnie's actual necklaces and those famous newspaper clippings reminds us that the glamorized mythology of outlaws was built on real tragedy, real sacrifice, and a fast road with no good way out. Our Route 66 centennial journey continues across state lines. In our next episodes, we roll straight into Oklahoma City to explore the legendary halls and Western heritage of the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single mile of the road ahead. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
This has been a Walk with History production. Talk with History is created and hosted by me, Scott Benny. Episode researched by Jennifer Benny. Check out the show notes for links and references mentioned in this episode. Talk with History is supported by our community at thehistoryroadtrip.com. Make sure you hit that follow button in that podcast player, and we'll talk to you next time.